What if I told you the most powerful financial system ever built, the one that funds America's military, backs the dollar, and controls trillions in global transactions, could be dismantled not by a war, not by a cyber attack, but by a single policy mistake made from the Oval Office? What if I told you it's already happening? Tonight, I'm going to walk you through, step by step, receipt by receipt, how Donald Trump's attempt to tax the world's money backfired so catastrophically that the biggest banks on Wall Street quietly packed up and moved their global operations to Canada, and how one man, Mark Carney, saw it coming years before anyone else. Stay until the end, because the final consequence, the one nobody is talking about, will affect your bank account, your mortgage, and your retirement directly. Let's begin. Before we talk about what broke, you need to understand what exists. Most people think Wall Street is a street, a collection of buildings, traders in suits yelling on a floor. That's the Hollywood version. The real Wall Street, the one that actually matters, is invisible. It lives in windowless data centers scattered across New Jersey, Virginia, and lower Manhattan. Inside those buildings, fiber optic cables carry trillions of dollars every single day. Not physical money. Digital signals, instructions, clearing codes, settlement confirmations. Every time a pension fund in Japan buys US Treasury bonds, the transaction passes through these servers. Every time a sovereign wealth fund in Norway rebalances its portfolio, the data flows through American infrastructure. Every time a hedge fund in London executes a trade, it touches U.S. clearing networks. This is the real source of American power. Not aircraft carriers, not nuclear warheads. Plumbing, financial plumbing. The ability to say, if you want to participate in the global economy, your money passes through us. And for decades, every nation on earth accepted that arrangement. Not because they loved America, because America offered something no one else could: stability, liquidity, and the rule of law. Until one man decided to turn that plumbing into a weapon, and another man decided to build a bypass. Here's what happened. Donald Trump, operating under his America First framework, introduced what his administration called the capital participation tax, a 2% levy on all foreign capital clearing through U.S. financial institutions. On paper, the logic sounds reasonable. Foreign investors use American infrastructure. They'd benefit from American stability. Why shouldn't they pay for the privilege? But here's what Trump didn't understand, or chose to ignore. Global finance doesn't operate on percentages. It operates on basis points. 1 basis point is 1/100th of 1%. When you're moving trillions of dollars daily, even a fraction of a basis point changes the math. A 2% tax? That's not a policy adjustment. That's a detonation. Overnight, the cost of clearing an international transaction through New York became the highest on the planet. Higher than London, higher than Singapore, higher than Hong Kong. And the institutions that move the world's money, pension funds managing the retirements of millions of people, sovereign wealth funds managing the savings of entire nations, they don't operate on loyalty. They operate on math. And the math said, leave. But where do you go? You can't just unplug trillions of dollars and plug them in somewhere else. You need a jurisdiction with deep legal protections, regulatory sophistication, a stable currency, political predictability, and, critically, physical proximity to the existing infrastructure. You need Canada, and specifically, you need the man running it. Mark Carney is not a normal politician. He's not even a normal central banker. He's a systems architect. He ran the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, and Canada was the only G7 nation whose banking system didn't require a bailout. He then crossed the Atlantic to run the Bank of England, steering Britain through Brexit. He chaired the Financial Stability Board, the global body responsible for preventing another financial meltdown. This is a man who has spent 30 years inside the engine room of global finance. He doesn't just understand the system, he helped design it. So when Trump announced the capital participation tax, Carney didn't react publicly. He didn't give angry press conferences. He didn't tweet. He did something far more dangerous. He prepared. Within weeks, Ottawa passed what insiders now call the Bay Street Framework, emergency legislation creating a sovereign clearing zone in Toronto. Here's what it guaranteed. 1, 0 transaction taxes on all foreign capital clearing through Canadian infrastructure, permanently enshrined in law. 2, absolute legal immunity from foreign executive orders. No U.S. president, no matter how powerful, could reach across the border and freeze, tax, or redirect those flows. 3, unlimited liquidity backstops from the Bank of Canada, ensuring that the transition from New York to Toronto would be seamless. No disruptions, no gaps, no panic. 4, regulatory equivalence with every major financial jurisdiction on earth, meaning institutions wouldn't have to rewrite compliance frameworks. They could simply move. Trump built a toll booth on the world's busiest financial highway. Carney didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He built a new highway. Faster, cheaper, and legally untouchable. 3 weeks before the tax took effect, an internal memo leaked from the coordinated strategy group of the 4 largest U.S. banks: J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Goldman Sachs. The document was titled Project Hamilton, Jurisdictional Risk and Capita Fly Contingency. Inside, it classified the U.S. Treasury, the body that prints the world's reserve currency, as a Tier 1 unpredictable actor. That's the same risk classification these banks assigned to unstable emerging market governments. The conclusion was unambiguous. Maintaining primary global settlement infrastructure on U.S. soil represented, and I'm quoting directly, an unacceptable systemic risk to fiduciary obligations. The banks didn't deliberate for months, they acted in days. Server configurations were adjusted, algorithms were rerouted, clearing codes were reassigned. No press conferences, no dramatic announcements, just technicians in quiet rooms flipping switches. And when the SEC filing went public confirming the transition, the markets delivered their verdict instantly. U.S. Treasury yields spiked 18 basis points. The dollar index dropped 1.2% in minutes. Meanwhile, Canadian bank stocks RBC, TD, Scotiabank surged 6% in a single session. The Toronto Stock Exchange hit all-time highs. The market didn't need a pundit to explain what happened. The numbers were screaming it. The center of gravity in global finance had just shifted north. Here's what makes this truly devastating for the United States. This isn't like a factory closing. You can't offer a tax break and lure it back. Financial infrastructure, once moved, creates its own gravity. Every day that global clearing operates through Toronto, new relationships form, new legal precedents are established, new liquidity pools deepen. Institutions build compliance systems around Canadian law. Counterparties adjust their routing. Within months, the cost of moving back to New York, even if Trump reversed the tax entirely, would exceed the cost of staying in Toronto. This is what economists call path dependency. Once the river changes course, the old riverbed dries up, and no amount of executive orders can make water flow uphill. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell reportedly made an emergency call to the White House the evening the SEC filing went public. Sources say he told the president that the tax had triggered a structural unanchoring of the U.S. financial system, that the mechanisms the United States uses to enforce sanctions, to project financial power, to fund its own debt, all of it depended on global capital flowing through American infrastructure. And that infrastructure was now in Canada. Now, here's the part nobody wants to talk about. This isn't an abstract geopolitical chess match. This hits your life directly. When foreign demand for U.S. Treasuries drops, because clearing those transactions now costs 2% more, interest rates rise. Your mortgage gets more expensive. Your car loan costs more. Your credit card rate climbs. When the dollar weakens, because global capital is flowing to Canadian infrastructure instead of American, import prices rise. Everything from electronics to groceries costs more. When Wall Street's global revenue shifts to Toronto, profits taxed under Canadian law, not American, U.S. tax revenue falls. The deficit widens, government services get cut, or debt spirals further. Your 401k, your savings, your purchasing power, all of it is connected to the system that just moved. You may not see the servers, you may not understand the clearing codes, but you will feel the consequences. Now here's the part nobody wants to talk about. This isn't an abstract geopolitical chess match. This hits your life directly. When foreign demand for U.S. Treasuries drops, because clearing those transactions now costs 2% more, interest rates rise. Your mortgage gets more expensive. Your car loan costs more. Your credit card rate climbs. When the dollar weakens, because global capital is flowing to Canadian infrastructure instead of American, import prices rise. Everything from electronics to groceries costs more. When Wall Street's global revenue shifts to Toronto, profits taxed under Canadian law, not American, U.S. tax revenue falls. The deficit widens. Government services get cut, where debt spirals further. Your 401k, your savings, your purchasing power, all of it is connected to the system that just moved. You may not see the servers, you may not understand the clearing codes, but you will feel the consequences. This is the lesson that history will record. Donald Trump believed he could tax the world into submission. He believed America's financial dominance was permanent, unconditional, and unchallengeable. He was wrong. Mark Carney didn't need to shout. He didn't need to threaten. He didn't need a single aircraft carrier. He just built the infrastructure, opened the doors, and let the math do the talking. In finance, preparation beats intimidation. Competence beats bluster. And spreadsheets, always without exception, beat ego. The money has moved. The power has shifted. And tonight, for the first time in modern history, the engine of global finance hums not from Manhattan, but from Toronto. Now listen. If this video opened your eyes, if this is the kind of truth the mainstream media refuses to cover, then I need you to do 3 things right now. Don't scroll past this. First, smash that like button. Second, hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Third, and this is the most important one, share this video. The media won't tell you this story, the politicians won't explain it, but the numbers are right here, and as you now know, the numbers never lie. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp, stay informed, and don't let anyone tell you this doesn't matter, because it already does.